Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Monty. For today's video, I'm doing something a little bit different than what I have done before. I'm gonna be doing what I like to call a genre TBR. So if you're really familiar with the booktube space, what most people do is they create a time-based TBR. So they'll do like a monthly, seasonal, or yearly type of TBR where they list out all the books that they intend to read in that specific time period. I did that back in December. I created a list of books that I planned on reading in December, and I just felt a little bit too much pressure with that to read those books and to stick with those books, and it took a little bit of the joy out of reading for me that month, so I haven't done it since then. But I have wanted to do some type of TBR series because I think it's helpful to let you all know what books I haven't read, what books you can expect me to read, what books I'm interested in reading, and then you can give me some feedback about whether you've read them or not, whether you enjoyed them, if I should bump them up or down on my priority list. And then even though I haven't read the books, you still might get some ideas of books that you maybe haven't heard of that you might be interested in picking up for yourself as well. Every month I'm gonna pick a different genre that I read, and I'm just gonna be listing the top books that I want to read within that genre sooner rather than later, but there's really no deadline. For the first one, I wanted to do nonfiction because I had set out to read more nonfiction in 2024 and I haven't really read any. So I figured I could amp myself up a little bit by pulling together a list that I really wanted to dive into and then talking to you about it, hearing your thoughts and opinions, and then maybe prioritizing my list based off of the comments that you leave down below. So I think I have about 7 to 8 nonfiction books that I'm really interested in reading. Again, this isn't an exhaustive list. This is just kind of my priority list. So when I'm in the mood for nonfiction, this is the list that I will refer to pick something from. But if you think that something is missing from my list, please let me know as well. I own 2 of these books myself, and then the rest I'm gonna have to acquire somehow. So I think I'm gonna start with the books that I own and then go into the ones that I don't own yet. So to start off, the first book that I want to read in the nonfiction category is Open Veins of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano. This book is essentially a history of the exploitation of Latin America by European and North American countries over the course of 5 centuries. I was recently in Mexico City and I visited the anthropology museum there, and just through that experience, a couple of conversations came up about the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire, and I just had very little to contribute to that conversation and didn't love that. So I'm really hoping that this book helps to fill in my huge gap in knowledge about this part of our world history. There's also a foreword in here that I've already read by Isabel Allende where she fully endorses this book, and so I'm really excited to dip my toes into this and learn more about this part of history that I am woefully uninformed on. Next, I have Biased by Dr. Jennifer L. Eberhardt, and the subtitle is Uncovering the Hidden Prejudice That Shapes What We See, Think, and Do. So this book is all about implicit bias. It is focused more, I think, on implicit racial bias, and what Dr. Eberhardt does in this book is she, I think, weaves in some of her own personal experiences with bias, and then she also, I think, cites a number of studies that investigate implicit bias. And she herself, I believe, is somewhat involved in the research on the topic at hand. This book talks about how implicit biases are formed, the consequences of them, and then what we can do to combat them. I think that this is a book that everyone can benefit from, at least I'm hoping that it is. I've heard really good things from a couple of my peers who have read it, and so I'm excited about it. Now I'm gonna move on to the books that I don't have physical copies of. The first one is Ejaculate Responsibly, A Whole New Way to Think About Abortion by Gabrielle Blair. This is a short book broken up into 28 arguments for why men should be held equally, if not more, responsible for unintended pregnancies. In our society, when you think about pregnancy prevention, the onus is almost always placed on women. I mean, 90% of the birth control market is for women. So I think this book is just trying to flip the script a little bit. I think this is a really important topic to explore and to discuss, and it's something that I want to be able to openly talk about in a knowledgeable way with my kids one day. I just remember when I was growing up, I was always told that I needed to do everything that I could to avoid getting pregnant, but I don't remember those same conversations happening really with my brother ever, even though he could have also gotten someone pregnant. And I think the author is also trying to shift the focus away with the whole topic of abortion from controlling women's bodies and redirecting the conversation to what can we do to even prevent the pregnancies from happening in the first place, the unwanted pregnancies, of course, and can we hold men a little bit more accountable in their involvement in the same exact sexual encounter. And I just want to be clear that I'm using the terms men and women in a very gender and heteronormative sense, so men being those with penises and women being those with vaginas. Anyway, really interested in reading this book. I already completely subscribe to the premise, but I just want to have a little bit more information at my disposal so that I can have very educated debates with other people about it. Then we have Why We Sleep, Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams by Matthew Walker. I want to read this book more for professional reasons than personal reasons. I feel like in the past few years, I've really dialed in on my sleep hygiene practices and I've been getting just really good sleep every single night. But on a professional level, I work as a physical therapist in an orthopedic setting, and pretty much every patient that I see in my first encounter with them, I ask them about their sleep because sleep is so crucial for recovering from an injury. And I need to know if my patient is not getting good sleep, what can we do? What barriers do we need to address so that they can get good quality sleep and heal in a timely manner? So I already feel like I have a pretty good understanding of why we sleep and sleep hygiene principles and that sort of thing, but I'm not sure that I have a book's worth of knowledge on it. So I just want to read this book and make sure that I'm really fleshing out the information that I already have access to, and then maybe get some tips and tricks and motivation that I can share with my patients. In the same vein as Why We Sleep, the other book that I want to read that's kind of focused on health and well-being is Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity by Peter Attia. I think what Peter Attia is doing with this book is he's trying to show people how they can increase not only their lifespan, but their health span. So when you think of lifespan, that's just the number of years that you live. But when you think of health span, it's the number of years that you live well, where you're functionally mobile, where you're pretty healthy and you get to enjoy those final years in your life. Health span really addresses that aspect of longevity. And I want to read this book because when I'm 90 years old, I don't want to be dealing with multiple health issues and feel like I'm bedridden. I want to be 90 and thriving. And so I'm hoping that this book can help me to get there, or at least increase my chances of getting there. Then I have Eve, How the Female Body Drove 200 Million Years of Human Evolution by Cat Bohannon. This is all about the evolution of the female body, and being the occupant of one, you can see why this book would intrigue me. My best friend also read it and gave it 5 stars, so I don't really have much to say on what this book is about. I probably won't until I read it, but I can read the blurb that tells you some of the questions that the author addresses in this book. Why do women live longer than men? Why are women more likely to get Alzheimer's? Why do girls score better at every academic subject than boys until puberty, when suddenly their scores plummet? Is sexism useful for evolution? And why, seriously, why do women have to sweat through our sheets every night when we hit menopause? I'd like to know the answers to every single one of those questions, and in order to do that, I need to pick this book up. The last book on my list is So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Ronson. Lately, I have been trying to unpack cancel culture a little bit. I recently listened to a podcast on this topic that I thought was really well done, and tackled this issue from a critical standpoint and how harmful it can be for the targets of this phenomenon. So the people that are singled out and canceled. I think often there's a mob mentality with it where it's really easy to dogpile on someone when everyone else around you is doing it, and it's easy to do it without doing any real reflection on why you're doing it. But I think people need to step back and think, is this productive? Is it actually inciting any change? And I do believe in holding people accountable for their transgressions, but I feel like it needs to be done in a way where they're allowed the space to take positive steps to correct their actions. And in many cases, the targets of cancel culture are actually innocent, and then they end up being ostracized from their social circles. Their reputations are smeared. Some people even lose their jobs over things like this. So I just want to hear Jon Ronson's take on the matter, and if he has any proposed solutions or any thoughts or any points that I haven't really considered. And those are the books right now that currently live on my nonfiction TBR. I'm hoping that I get to a few of them this year, but I don't know which ones. So if you have any thoughts on the matter, please tell me down in the comments below. If you have any favorite nonfiction books that I didn't mention, please tell me, because I would love to add it to my list. And I'm always looking for really good, digestible, accessible, readable nonfiction that covers topics I'm interested in. And of course, if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned and you either enjoyed or didn't enjoy them, tell me that as well. I also forgot to mention in my intro that I don't categorize memoirs into nonfiction, because a lot of times memoirs have fictionalized elements in them, and so to me they're their own category. There's nonfiction, there's fiction, and then there's memoirs. So I'm gonna do a whole video on memoirs just in and of itself, because I love memoirs. I read a memoir a month probably, and so I have a ton that I really want to get to. So I didn't include them in this nonfiction video. So if any of your recommendations are memoirs, I would save that for a later video and just put really strictly knowledge-based nonfiction down below. And I think that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.